Have you ever said something in anger that you instantly regretted and wish you could take back? Or do you find yourself struggling with a sharp tongue, sarcasm, criticism? Or do you stuff anger and find that it comes out either in unwanted habits that give you relief from it, or just a simmering sense of resentment? Well, I have struggled with all of those sorts of poor handling of anger, and I'd like to talk about this topic just for a few minutes and tell you how I handled anger before Christ, after I became a believer, and how I handle it today. And I'd like to end with some really practical ways for you to process your anger. Anger feels good sometimes at the moment that we express it. We send that zinger, but then afterwards, we have that convicting feeling of sadness or remorse because of what our anger destroyed. So let's not do that anymore. Let's find a better way. So, this is how I like to talk about all these topics, what I used to be like before Christ, how I confronted this as a new Christian, and how I process anger today, one day at a time, always ending with biblical application for you. So before Christ, I grew up in a very, I'd say, tense home. There was addiction in the home, and there was definitely some resentment and hostility between the players of the home. There was not a lot of overt anger. There were things were not thrown. There was not physical violence, but there was a feeling of tension and hostility in my home, such to the point that I didn't want to be a part of it and I didn't want it expressed in my own life. And so I did a lot of stuffing. I'll say that there wasn't a lot of training in how to express anger well. And so the anger vibes that I witnessed, I did not enjoy. And then with my own anger, I just really didn't know what to do with it. And so I stuffed it, which is probably what led me to my own addiction, which I'll talk about in the next video about what I was like, what happened, and how I am today. Because stuffed emotions often come out sideways in besetting sins or behaviors that we don't want to indulge in, but we can't seem to stop. So I would say also that I had a very sarcastic tongue. And that's another way that anger can seep out sideways, so to speak. And so then, as a Christian, I realized that I wanted my heart to be pure. I didn't want to use sarcasm. I certainly didn't want to use the Lord's name in vain. I didn't want to tear people down. I wanted to build them up. I was so humbled as a believer. God really gave me a sense of hatred for the old man and a true sense of mercy from Him, that He had forgiven all of it. And so I often bring up this concept in my teachings because it was so helpful to me as a new believer. And yet I find a lot of new believers don't get this training and mentoring. But I wrote out all the things that I was angry about, had been angry about. I wrote them all out because those were actually ways of me holding on to grudges. And so, as a new Christian, I didn't want to walk around with grudges. And so, I made a list. I made a chronological list of all the people I was angry at, all the situations I was angry at. And I will say that I didn't have anger against God because I didn't know God before I met Him. I was not raised with any sort of religious background. So I did not have issues with God. I guess I tended to blame myself when things went wrong rather than God. But I have met a lot of Christians who need to put God on their anger list, grudges that they hold against God. That just wasn't my issue. And then I brought that list to Jesus because what I was taught and what I believe is true is holding a grudge is a way of of judging someone, of wanting to get vengeance on them, of holding their sins against them rather than forgiving 70 times, 7 times. And so I wrote my list because I wanted all of it out of my heart and off of my chest. And then I read it all to Jesus, who I did sense his kindness and his compassion and his understanding at all of those situations that were so vexing to me thus far in my life. But I also asked forgiveness of him for my own sin of unforgiveness. There was so much growth in those beginning years of walking with Christ, that I could see that I had responded to people out of ignorance. I didn't have a God to go to. I didn't have a father to go to. I felt very unprotected and self-defensive before I had a relationship with Jesus, before I met him. And so I did not feel condemnation when I went through this, but I definitely needed to get all of it out of my heart onto paper before the Lord and be forgiven for my own list of grudges that I had kept, and also release all of those people. And I'll tell you, understanding the grace, just having been given by the Holy Spirit such an understanding of how far short I had fallen from God's standard, the many ways that I had played jury and judge against other people, and yet God still called me while I was yet sinning. God called me into relationship with him, and he forgave all of my debt. And so I try to never forget the grace that was extended to me, and I do seek to extend that to others. So the way I handle it today, again, I'll talk about how I came was brought to freedom from my addiction and the next teaching. But I realized during my process of coming out of addiction that I could not afford to stuff emotions anymore. I need to be completely authentic. And yet, it's a true fact living on the planet that people are going to be vexing. I'm going to be provoked, and I don't want to sin, and I don't want to deny it. I don't want to sin in response. So these are some questions I ask myself when I feel a pricking in my spirit. Is it personal? So many times, someone else is having a bad day, and it splashes onto me, but it has absolutely nothing to do with me. I respond to that with compassion. If this is a person I'm in relationship with who is continually busting through a boundary that I have, or continually being disrespectful, the first time I'll let it go because it doesn't characterize them. If it's starting to characterize them and it is provoking me, and I wish I were Christian enough to not care, but the truth is, the authentic truth is, it is bothering me, then I'm going to point it out to them and say, hey, could you please stop whatever it is, leaving your mess on the front cabinets or whatever. Um, the other question to ask is it hurting them? Am I watching a loved one commit something vexing again and again? I need to get myself out of the way and say, is it worth bringing up to them because it's hurting them? Or is it just annoying to me? There might just be a different way of doing things, in which case I need to accept. So if it is a sin, or a provocation, or a bump into my boundaries, once again, if it's a one-off, if it doesn't characterize them, I will try always to cover it with love. I do go to great lengths to put myself in their shoes. Could it be they're having a bad day? Could it be this has absolutely nothing to me, and I'm just kind of seeing them exposed because they're weak right now. I do seek to cover it with love. We all have blind spots. I know I have my own. I want you to grant me grace when I'm acting in them, or bring it to my attention if it's become habitual. But I really do try to cover it with love. But if I can't, I will know, because I will feel a kind of a tightness in my stomach. I will not feel happy when I see them again. When that's truly when I'm honest with myself, then it's time to speak truth. Otherwise, I'm just stuffing it. So compassion, humility, and forgiveness go a long way. Compassion, remembering that everyone on the planet is fighting their battles and I don't even know what those battles are. Humility, remembering how much God has forgiven me. And while I was yet sinning, he died for me. And so I want to have that largeness of heart towards other people's failings and forgiveness, letting it go quickly. That means when someone vexes me tomorrow, it's the first time because I've already forgiven when they vexed me today. That's just kind of how I do it. So, my thoughts for you, remember always the gospel. Remember God's forgiveness and forbearance of you. Uh, Keep that foremost in the front of your mind and then ask God how He would have you respond in that vexing situation. Whoops. Pause to process. Don't react. Act, don't react. Get control of your own emotions and immediately like hupatasso, like that's the word for submission. Submit yourself to the rule of the Holy Spirit. Ask the questions that I just showed you in the last slide. Um, if you can at all get that time. And if there's something that's weighing on you that you're not sure if it's a sin of theirs that you need to confront or if it's just a pesky annoyance and you need to grow a thicker skin, if you're into those kind of weeds and you've had the wherewithal to not respond yet, you can always respond later. Go ahead and get some counsel because sometimes our blind spots make it hard to know what's the right thing to do. But if you do decide to wait, to pause, and then ultimately to do nothing, you must forgive and let it go. You must. You can't have someone vex you and then think about what to do about it for a week. Because the chill will be there. You maybe if it's super complicated, you can say to them, "Hey, I'm going to need to get back to you about that. I'm working on it. I'll talk to you a week from today." But you can't just start chilling someone. All right, so that's how I handle anger today. If you have other topics, I'm trying to make myself available to Christian women because I think that Christian women need to be mentoring Christian women. So if there's another emotion that you would like for me to just share with you, my experience, strength, and hope, how I handle it as a Christian who's been walking with Jesus for 40 years, please, in the comments, ask me to address the topic that you'd like to hear some experience on, and I will make you a video.